Okay, welcome everyone to this reading of, where is it? Right? It moved. There it is, hands on. Let me get my visual display. Welcome, my name is Greg Newton. I'm the co-founder, along with my beloved partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. And the Bureau is an independent, all-volunteer queer bookstore that we founded back in 2012, and that's been here at the LGBT Center since 2014. As an independent, all-volunteer queer bookstore, we are dependent on sales and donations to keep this machinery going. So I'm gonna pass a bag around for donations if you're able to give something great, especially if you know you won't be buying a book. We would love it if you're able to support us in one way or another. So there's some change in here if you need it. There's also a Venmo code on the back. And anyone watching online can also give through Venmo at BGSQD. There's letters on my chest. And the Bureau is open Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. And since it's June, we are in heavy event mode. So please check out our calendar on our website to see what's coming up. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which goes out every other Monday. You can sign up for that at the back of the room or on the website, which is bgsqd.com. And I think that's it for logistics. I already said our hours, didn't I? Yes, okay, good. I want to cover all the bases. I wanted to read a land acknowledgement before we get started. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective queer liberation. And we encourage you to read our free zine, this cute little guy, on why we feel it's important, especially for queer people, to speak out on behalf of Palestinians and in solidarity with Palestinians. So you can find those at the counter, at our little Palestine table in the corner, and please take one and spread the word. And with that, please give a warm welcome to Remy Newman, the editor of Hands On, Stories of Sexuality Work, Intimacy, and Healing.
Not to be self-conscious. See myself, I'm not self-conscious in front of you all, but I'm on the video. Hello. Okay, is this the right height? Can you hear me? There, I'll do that. Okay. I'll stand for now, but I think I'll sit when I read. Well, thank you so much, Greg, and partner, husband, I forgot already your name, I apologize. Donnie, thank you. And thank you, Don, for making this happen. Really appreciate it, and thank you all for being here. So I'll just tell you briefly about how the idea for the anthology Hands On came to be. So I've been a sexuality educator and counselor for about 25 years now. I've been a surrogate partner for about 10 years. And I was working on a human sexuality textbook with a professor in Marin. I live in Northern California. And I was working on a sex work chapter, and I wanted to have different voices in the chapter. So I reached out to two colleagues, friends that I knew. One, Daddy Lance, who some of you may know, who I knew through the surrogate partner world. And I also reached out to a friend and colleague, a pro-dom I know, Natasha, and asked them if they would be interested in writing something for this textbook. And I said, you can write whatever you want. What do you think these young people going to college should know about your work? And they both wrote these just beautiful, poignant vignettes. I was so moved and impressed by them, and I thought I know, and I knew from my own work as well as a surrogate partner, that there were more stories like this out there. That what I felt came through in both of their short vignettes was just such a profound sense of compassion for the work that they were doing. And I thought, I don't think that's the first thing that people think of when they think of sex work. And that's when I was inspired that this could be an anthology. And I was in 2022 at the ASEC conference. ASEC is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. It's an organization I've been a part of for years. And I saw there was a publisher there, Jessica Kingsley. And I reached out to them and said, I have this idea for an anthology on compassion and sex work. What do you think? And someone from there wrote back right away and said, we love this idea. And as a matter of fact, we're really hoping they're expanding their books to have more on sexuality, and they didn't have anything on sex work at all yet, and we're hoping to have more on sex work. And so this is the first Jessica Kingsley book, that is around the topic of sex work. And so that's how the idea was born. After that, it took me a little while to find all these amazing people. So some of them are here tonight joining us. But I certainly immediately reached out to Daddy Lance and Natasha, and their stories are in there. And then Don was wonderful in connecting me with some other, with other folks like Court Vox and who else I'm blanking. Jojo Bear, of course, yes, who are also in the book. So it's 15 authors plus myself. I also do have a few stories in there. I'm also Maya and Wendy. So tonight I will be Wendy later. You'll just see a quick change. I will look the same, but I'm Wendy. And that's not uncommon. I think a lot of us in here, we're working with more than one name for lots of reasons. I also just I just glanced at your keffiyeh. I'm only wearing this baby keffiyeh because I get too hot right now in New York City, but I appreciate you acknowledging the Palestinian cause. So I think with that, I'm gonna turn it over. So what we're gonna do is each of us are gonna come up. We have several of our authors here tonight, and we're gonna come up and introduce ourselves and read for a few minutes an excerpt from one of our stories, and then we will have some time at the end for questions, conversation. We have snacks in the back, and please do purchase a book, and please do support the Bureau. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So first we're going to have Don Shuey. And if most comfortable.
Thanks, Remy. Really appreciate you putting this together, and happy to be here at the Bureau. I'm a writer and pleasure activist and therapist in retirement now, but I've a couple of years ago published a memoir called Daddy, Lover, God, A Sacred Intimate Journey. And there are a lot of stories in the book about working with clients, and there are a few stories about a particular client, and this is sort of following up about that client. So some years ago, a colleague in Boston, this is called The End of Eugene. A colleague in Boston passed along an inquiry from a man named Martin, who was looking for someone to give a tantric massage to his partner who has ALS, the degenerative nerve disorder also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. I agreed to do the session and asked his partner's name. It was only then that I learned we were talking about someone I did an intense year-long series of sacred intimate sessions with. I'll call him Eugene. When I met him, Eugene was 44, a handsome black man, a high-powered entertainment business executive, married with 2 children and going through a contentious divorce from his wife while continuing to share a gigantic Upper East Side townhouse. He let me know in our early sessions that he had always had curiosity about sex with men, but had suppressed his desires because of social pressure to conform, get married, raise a family, climb the corporate ladder, socialize with other finance bros. His ideas about sex were equally conventional, pretty much confined to intercourse to ejaculation. Coming to me for erotic massage gave him the opportunity to inhabit the formerly taboo realm of touching and being touched by another man. I introduced him to slow, sensual touch and body electric style breath work, and I provided a safe space for him to explore mutual oral and anal pleasure, both of which turned out to be revelatory for him. He had quaintly amusing straight guy language for erotic interactions. He appreciated massage but couldn't wait for it to get interesting. Anything other than penetration he would term role-playing. Perhaps inevitably, after several sessions, he wondered if it would be possible to have what he called real sex. As we gravitated from the massage table to the bed, he let me know that he loved kissing, hugging, touching my butt, and getting orally serviced. Still, he wondered, when are we going to go all the way? In my guise as somatic sex educator, I made it my mission to spread the gospel of Tantra, expanding his notion of what constitutes real sex, and I clued him into the principles of safer sex, which emerged from the gay male community during the AIDS epidemic, but for the most part escaped the attention of men on the down low like Eugene. Although he admitted to being a linear thinker attached to completion, he agreed to receiving a classic Taoist erotic massage, which combines intense breathing and genital massage with the intention of raising and circulating erotic energy around the body without the goal of ejaculating. He reported finding the experience less erotic than he imagined it would be, yet highly spiritual. The image came to him of being deep in a green medieval forest. He said, "I think I really needed this, but you figured that out, didn't you?" I loved that Eugene took our sessions seriously. He listened to what I said and thought about it carefully. He was haunted by my asking if anybody else in his life knew that he was attracted to men. He took that as a challenge, and I guess he felt a little defensive. He said it didn't make sense to go public with that admission unless he were in love. Embracing a gay or bisexual identity would mean losing status with his straight male friends and his conservative Southern family. He came to me for pure fun, to escape the rigors of responsibility. I understood and did not require him to make any public declarations. Inevitably, we did proceed to exploring intercourse with condoms. Can I do the ultimate, as he put it? I turned him on to erotic wrestling and using toys, cock rings, dildos, and blindfolds to enhance sexual pleasure. After one climax, he proclaimed, "This is great. It's better than a heavy spiritual trip." I said, "Who says spirit has to be heavy? Spirit dances too." He heartily agreed, though he fretted that after these sessions with me, he wouldn't be able to enjoy conventional sex. I said, "Eugene, you never have to have conventional sex again. Bring all of this to your sex partners." After 21 sessions over the course of a calendar year, Eugene called me and wondered if he could take me to dinner to discuss an article I'd shared with him about the Body Electric School and its tantric approach to sexuality. Ordinarily, I maintain strict boundaries and don't socialize with clients, but I decided to make an exception this time. I liked Eugene, and if I could encourage him to cultivate more curiosity and self-awareness about his erotic options, I was game. We had a great friendly conversation over an expensive meal, sharing personal histories. But as the dinner was winding down, I realized that Eugene was angling to shift our relationship from client and practitioner to something that looked more like dating. It wasn't so much that he wanted to stop paying for sessions, he had plenty of money, but that he was interested in developing a more mutual, interactive, emotional connection. Sex workers face this dilemma with regular clients all the time. If I were younger and hungrier and more adventurous, in other words, if I were a different person, I might have been intrigued to have an affair with a wealthy, closeted, bisexual businessman, just to see where it would go. But I wasn't a kid anymore, and I didn't think it would be especially rewarding for me or healthy for him. Since he hadn't told anyone in his life that he was attracted to men, I would be taking on the burden of maintaining his sexual secret. I wanted more for him. I hoped that he would gain the courage and self-confidence to meet other men as peers, to explore mutual attraction. And I couldn't help believing that the friends who loved and cared for him would want him to be happy and support him in not hiding. He understood what I was saying, though he felt sad and disappointed. We parted with an affectionate hug, and then I didn't hear from him again. Until 15 years later, when I got the message from Martin. I was simultaneously delighted to know that Eugene had acquired a male partner and distressed to learn about his illness. Anybody who knows anything about ALS knows that it's a relentless and fatal disease. I looked it up on Wikipedia, which told me that patients are ranked on a functional range scale from 48, normal and healthy, to 0, incapacitated, and that they lose 1 point on the scale every month. Survival at 3 years is 10%, a grim prognosis. I've worked with other clients who've had severe physical disabilities. I've seen how touch deprived they tended to be and how much they appreciated receiving even the slightest physical contact. Sad as I was to learn about Eugene's situation, I was willing to provide some pleasure if I could. He now lived in a high-rise in the financial district downtown. I didn't know what to expect when I arrived. Martin said he would be there, and so would some other family members, but we would close the door and have privacy. A man met me at the door who introduced himself as Eugene's brother-in-law, and then I met Martin, who ushered me straight into Eugene's room. He was in a hospital bed, sitting up straight, looking very alert and familiar. He couldn't offer his hand to shake because he was essentially immobilized below the neck. Apparently, he had a limited amount of motion in his left arm and left leg, but not much. I felt a wave of familiar joy seeing him. He was very happy to see me and completely compos mentis. Martin asked if I needed anything, brought me water, and then left us alone. Eugene told me that he had been diagnosed almost a year ago. He moved into this apartment in January. He previously lived upstairs in a fancier place, but was able to sell it for a good price and rent this one, thereby acquiring cash to distribute to his daughters. I started out by getting undressed and uncovering him. He said he got massage regularly in the context of occupational therapy, but he hadn't had any sensual attention since all this started. I could see there was no point in getting fancy about full-body massage, rolling him over on his side to reach all the muscle groups. I just kissed him lightly, all over from head to toe. Then I crawled up onto the bed and made out with him, held him, touched him all over, and pleasured his penis. We reminisced about fun times we'd had in the past. He mentioned how much he enjoyed rimming, so I perched over him so he could revisit that flavor of delectation. This was totally like a scene from out of the movie The Sessions. How does a man who can only move his tongue eat ass? That went on for only a minute, box checked. I made sure to touch him all over his body, but I assumed that primarily he wanted attention to his dick, and ultimately he admitted he wanted me to make him squirt. I manipulated him at length and then started playing with his butt, which I knew he enjoyed. I got out my liquid silk, slid a lubricated finger inside him, and worked his prostate while stroking him. Finally, he did yield a thick, juicy load. He asked me if it was big. I told him yes. Later, I realized I could have taken a picture and showed it to him. I cleaned him up, we chatted some more, and then I left. There were 2 women in the kitchen, presumably his caretaker and his sister, who looked at me disapprovingly. Martin walked me to the door and handed me $300, and that was that. What a saga. What struck me was how alive and alert and accepting of his condition Eugene seemed. He told me 2 close friends recently visited and brought him takeout from Jean-Georges and a good bottle of Chateau Margaux. Eugene said it was everything he wanted, except one thing. The guys said, well, we could send you up a couple of girls from Asian Beauties. How little they knew. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Shall I introduce
Eva,
Eva?
sure, you could.
So,
Eva's next.
our next reader will be Eva.
Thank you, Dawn. Hi. It's amazing to be in New York City. This is where my journey as a sex worker started about 15 years ago when I was 29. And I was failing at life and sex and adventure. And I was in a small town in Texas, Googling how to be a prostitute because I felt it was the last resource I had. And it led me to this great city What I didn't know at the time, because I did learn a lot about sex and I learned a lot about men's bodies, was that I also internalized what I learned from culture, because I had a very sex-negative, ignorant upbringing. So I learned that sex was for the man, that it was about his pleasure, that it was about his orgasm, and I learned to do that really well, and I got paid really well. So I thought, when you get paid well to do something, it means you're good at it. I am good at sex. When I left the work, and I wanted to be in a relationship, because I had a dim awareness that I was lacking something, and I wanted to be with someone who would pay attention to me. I wanted to know what that felt like to be one of my own clients. Unfortunately, as per our conditioning, I got into relationships that were also emotionally neglectful. That was my safe place. It wasn't in my relationships that I learned how to be soft and vulnerable and receptive. It wasn't until 5 years ago when I went on a quest, deciding that there must be more to sex and intimacy than I have garnered so far. And it's that quest that led me to trainings and a spiritual practice and a new set of clients where I learned more about myself and what my body is capable of when it is truly receptive and when I'm with someone who is truly present. So this client here, our session was very much a surprise to both of us. He was on a mission to merge intimacy with penetration. He had done all the things for a decade with his partners, but he was terrified of penetration. And so his intimacy, his connection, his polyamory, his self-awareness was all there, but not when it comes to penetrating his partners. And as my path had also been merging intimacy with sexuality, I welcomed him into a 3-day intensive. He told me in our consultation that his end goal was that he wanted to be a sex god. And I take my clients' intents very seriously because that is the guiding light for the sessions. And we talked a bit about what that meant. And I'm going to bring you in on day 3 of our time together. And this essay is titled, Sex God. We looked at each other, a long look. The presence is ripe. M has come to the crux of what he showed up to work on, having penetrative sex while maintaining connection and intimacy. It is rare for a client to move as quickly as he has. M has been in therapy for years and has a firm understanding of his body and his window of tolerance for self-regulating. He has explored his sexuality alone and with partners, but with very little penetration for years. And with me, he has been regulating, absorbing, and integrating our work together at a phenomenal rate, then asking for more. It was because of M's already developed ability to be present, intimate, and attuned that we were able to explore and experience his sexuality at such depth and in such a short amount of time. We are naked and give each other a hug of gratitude and acknowledgement. It doesn't end. I feel the beauty and the raw power in him that is longing to be out, longing to be free. And my body responds. I tell him he is powerful. His sexual energy is powerful. His cock is powerful, no matter how it shows up. Does he feel me? Yes. Picking up from the previous day, I ask again, what is your expression now? Will you show me? And he does, his hand lightly caressing my throat, the breath coming harder. My body melts under his, and a doorway of possibilities opens. I keep drawing his power out with my own. Show me, I whispered, and he groans and asks for a condom. Mindfully, I oblige. Now, we are engaged in penetration again, but this time he is more centered. He is more in himself, and he becomes more and more centered the more he relaxes into what is happening and what he is feeling. He is feeling his cock, and he is feeling me, and my body is feeling his. My body feels safe and connected with the presence he is bringing. The sweet spot at my cervix opens a little. The more conscious he is, the more receptive my body is. We are in this together. I slide back on the bed, and we are drenched in sweat. He is present and eager. He asks if I will sit on him, and I do, not keeping a steady rhythm, but rather following the rhythm of our bodies and feeling. The connection deepens. I ride and modulate with his energy, slowing down and picking up as nature moves through us. At slower times, we speak out loud the sensations in our bodies. I say, I feel your hands on my hips, the sweat where my skin touches yours, warmth in my belly, an expansion in my heart. He said, I feel the heat of you surrounding my cock. I hear my own breathing, the music, and feel the sheets bunching at my feet. Your skin is so soft. In this presence, I am awash in extended moments of ethereal levitation. I lean all the way forward, chest to chest, my cheek next to his. We are not moving forward, but suspended, blossoming. M breathes into my ear. This is what sex is for, isn't it? It is to me, is all I can murmur, getting even closer. Time slows, intimacy expands, and pleasure widens. My invisible body softens more, encompassing his, and I whisper that I feel like stardust dancing in the Milky Way. And I draw him into me, even as he draws me into him.
Next, we will have Evie. I'll leave it up here for you. You're taller than me.
Hi there, I'm Evie. I'm a sex worker out in Chicago. I've been in the business for about 10 years, and I've had a horrible habit of writing the whole time. So I have a few pieces, and I'm just gonna read the shortest of them. So if you wanna read more, you have to buy the book. Probably should have marked it, right? It's called Strings of Lies. You've given me something special, a reason to live. His eyes, glassy and bloodshot from being day drunk, fill with water as we stand in his condo's parking garage. I say nothing and brush his lashes with my thumb. Then I run the backs of my fingers down his face, pausing over cheekbones that are too high and too wide for a man so frail. He smiles and cries. The valet arrives with my car. The man kisses my hand and places a $200 tip in it. I kiss him goodbye. It's hard to forget being someone's reason to live. He forgot. Maybe he needed a better reason. Or maybe I just wasn't enough. Or maybe he lied. Lying comes easy to men like him. After his first bottle of morning wine, he's always confessed to me that he was once a lawyer. He could tell me how he hated it and how he found the profession unsavory and cruel, and he hated the person he had to be when he practiced law. He didn't hate it enough to stop him from making him $1 million in his 40s. He didn't hate it enough to not still practice law as a hobby in his 70s. He sips his way through another half bottle while we sit at his table overlooking the harbor 30 floors beneath us. A decorative red envelope with my 2-hour fee still sits on the placemat next to my elbow. I play the harp, he says. I love it. I play several hours a day. He tells me he finished his private lesson shortly before I arrived. It might be unfair for me to assume that this is a lie, but I do anyway. He drinks too much to be telling the truth. He couldn't play harp while shaking in the morning. The amount that he would need to drink in order to stop his hands from shaking would certainly affect his ability to play. You should play for me sometime, I say with a smile. I don't want him to know that I know he never will. I just want to indulge his fantasy. If I can't pretend to find him fascinating, I have no business being there. I'm here to make him feel loved and wanted. I want to hear you play. I actually did want to hear him play. He was a man who strove for excellence in every area of his life. If he were able to play, he would be extraordinary. I wanted to hear that version of him play the harp, the version of him he thought he was when he'd opened his 3rd bottle of wine at 2 p.m. At 2 p.m., I was his reason to live. It was the one time I believed him. It was the moment I felt an authentic love for him. I held it sacred that I was his reason to live. But like the harp, I was nothing more than a fantasy to him, something he drank too much to be able to hold on to.
Thank you. And next, Naomi.
It moves.
Hey everyone, my name is Ayla Mahmoud, and I am a clinician, theorist, music nerd, and I've been a sex worker, well, a former sex worker, in within 3 decades and in 3 cities. And part of my story is I actually didn't know that I was a sex worker until someone pointed out to me, because in the sex work communities, there's sometimes a hierarchy of who is a sex worker, who gets to call ourselves sex workers. So I did what was called survival sex work at first when my family kicked me out for being queer at a very young age. And so survival sex work became a place for me to go, a place for me to survive. And my story is called Sex Worker Heal Thyself. And part of my story is becoming a first-time sex work buyer and not knowing what to do, even with a sex work history. And starting within the middle of my story, how do you find a sex worker? So I found Kay Chen Pham's amazing article, How Do I Hire a Sex Worker? After browsing independent sex worker websites. I reached out to a non-binary femme who seemed sweet, nerdy, and someone who might give me space to move slowly. Over email, I told her I was scared, lonely, and wanting to be held. I can't believe I used to be a hooker, I thought as I looked at myself in the mirror. My perceived weakness and ugliness were staring at me, escorting my anxiety back to its monstrosity-like baseline. I was used to the demands of clients treating me like a fast food order. I was worried my vulnerability would be seen as not being real, or my demisexuality seemed strange. I did not want to have to explain myself to my worker. I worried about her feelings of safety, meeting me as I had felt in her situations. I asked her about her boundaries, and she told me her limitations, what she could and could not offer. It was good to hear that she knew what her needs were, as I had never considered my boundaries much when I was a worker. Witnessing another worker saying, "This is what I can and cannot give you," was the first act of healing I felt with her. Healing can look like someone showing you boundaries. Healing can happen as it happens. After reaching out, I thought about my sex work history at age 15. It was for places to stay when I was afraid of my violent family. My mantra when Johns got rough with me was, at least they're not throwing me downstairs, or they are not calling me worthless. Both fractured my body and spirit. Through a street community, I learned I could ask for money for my time and services. Sex work became better as I developed new skills and friends around the Belmont-Clark area of Chicago in the mid-1990s. I learned who the buyers were around the neighborhood, who was safer, and who never to go home with. I was able to interpret how men looked at me when walking down the street. Eye contact, which I didn't normally enjoy, casually became a work survival skill. Other skills I learned were have a street name, never carry an ID, always carry mace, and keep a box cutter on you. The list of advice for a young worker was endless, but it kept me safe. It felt like I had people who cared about me, family, for the first time in my life. One piece of advice I did not take was never let your guard down by doing drugs with Johns. One John I actually liked, as a person, offered me Valium. I liked him because he was kind, not demanding. He was the first client I saw for a second time, younger than other Johns, around mid-20s. He smelled better than most men, and talked to me like a person, holding curiosity and giving me much needed emotional attention. When the Valium kicked in during our second session, he was playing an album that was intoxicating as the pills. Sexuality, he said. When he saw that I was paying close attention to music, the CD plays twice, and the slow dive song I connected with most was Allison. With your talking and your pills, your messed up life still thrills me. Allison, I'm lost. This is who I am, I thought, as my medicated body allowed him inside me without the pain and pressure I associated with penetration. I was enjoying my sexual experience with him, something I'd not felt before in any other sexual experience. I let him know, wanted him to kiss me on the lips. Another sex work no-no I learned from more experienced workers. It's too intimate, they'll think you own you, tits, neck. It's just too intimate. Afterwards, he held me and I wanted his closeness. He asked me what my name was. I always used the name AJ as it was gender ambiguous, anonymous. Allison, I said shyly, not sure if he would believe me. Oh, like the song he said with a deep pause. That's your song, Allison. He kissed me deeply. I knew this was not love or even lust. This was two people hurting, holding moments for each other to make the pain less severe, if only for a little bit. He was lonely. He had lost his girlfriend to the streets. He told me he couldn't stop using. He was afraid of dying. Not waking up or getting AIDS, he said, I would just rather not wake up. He asked me if I was kicked out like the rest of the queer kids. I was. I left my family because I couldn't access love from them. Being on the street felt safer than being at home. He listened and gave me a wonderful experience based on connection and support for our pain. I felt we were good for each other within the parameters of our arrangements. He took out 3 $20 bills from his wallet as I was getting ready to go. Take good care, Allison. I never saw him again. Thank you.
Now Wendy. So interesting. I was in my late 20s too in New York City when I first dabbled in sex work. So I decided that being that we're in New York, I'll read my New York City story. So I'll set the stage a little bit. I was here going to NYU for a master's in sex education. So I was fascinated and interested in certainly in human sexuality. Also could use a little extra cash, and I also found the whole idea kind of titillating. But I was certainly coming into this work with a lot of privilege. I talk about that at the beginning of the story, but, and at the time, this was there was no Googling, so I'm a bit older than you, I noticed. This was the Village Voice. I put an ad in the Village Voice. I had studied the ads, and I came up with the line, I'll spoil you if you spoil me. That was my sort of like, do you know what I'm really asking about here? Anyway, and you would get voicemails you could check, and so I was having these, dinner dates. I would vet people, and I didn't know any sex workers or I was doing this on my own. I had a therapist at the time, and she was the only person I was talking to about it. So that's kind of where we're gonna start. Also, a couple other quick things. The publishers, the editors asked that some details be changed. We're gonna change one of them back here, because why not? So anyway, so if you were reading along, but I'm just gonna change a couple things, because I feel like, it's not true. They were concerned with, someone being able to identify themselves. Honestly, this man, client in the story, I think he'd be about 100 now, so I have a feeling he may no longer be with us, may he rest in peace, but it really seemed a little, I guess I shouldn't, but I went ahead and made some of the changes, and I know some of you did that as well, so I appreciate that. Okay, so because I was new to this world and had no one to guide me except for my therapist, who was also new to this world, I opted for the man who seemed most at home with the transactional nature of our relationship. He insisted we meet at the restaurant at the Met. He told me he only donated money there and nowhere else, as if that was something that would impress me. It was because of his generous donations that we could be dining here. He said if people asked how we met, we would say it was at the museum. He looked less like a sugar daddy and more like a sugar granddaddy. I was in my 20s and he was in his 70s. I thought people who knew me might think it odd that I was picking up old men at the museum as lunch dates, but luckily we never needed to explain our relationship to anyone. At our lunch meeting, he slipped me an envelope that I later discovered had $100 in it. I had not requested any payment for what I saw as his interview. I was impressed with his planning. We agreed to meet at his apartment the next week. We would spend some time there and then go to lunch. He suggested I dress modestly, yet he did say he liked schoolgirl attire. At the time, my wardrobe and bank account were pretty limited. I managed to find tights and a mid-length tartan skirt in my closet. I was to look attractive, but not like a sex worker. Riding the subway there was titillating. I imagined what my fellow riders would think of me if they knew where I was going, what I was going to do. I sat with my legs closed, smoothing out my skirt, smiling to myself. What he wanted sexually was quite specific. He introduced me to his orange dildo. He told me he wouldn't be able to get an erection due to his age and health issues, but he could come if I put that dildo in his ass and sucked his cock at the same time. He was right. It worked every time. I would shower afterwards before we went out to lunch. Lunch, it turned out, was more challenging. He was kind to me, but often rude to the waitstaff. I wanted to communicate to them, I'm sorry, I'm one of you. I'm working for tips too. He told me his wife and son hated him. Seeing how he treated the waitstaff at the restaurant, I could imagine what sort of husband and father he was and why they may truly have hated him. Yet I saw a different side of him as well. He allowed himself to be vulnerable with me. I saw how much he craved connection, affection, and yes, sex. He told me he was bisexual and had experiences with men, which was no surprise to me given how he took that dildo. I wondered if he was truly attracted more to men and had never felt safe enough to come out as gay. It felt sad that he possibly still didn't feel safe enough to come out, even in secret. Why have me come over and stick a dildo up his ass rather than inviting some nice young man who could do the same but with a real cock? And then just send the young man on his way with a check and skip lunch. No one else would have to know. I was able to give him at least some of what he craved, without judgment, with genuine affection. He would touch me too, and I could easily have an orgasm as I was aroused by the whole scenario. It was naughty and fun, and it didn't hurt to walk out with a check for $500. He only got annoyed at me once, when I left crumbs on the kitchen countertop. This, he said, his wife might notice. He gave me a little scolding, and I found it odd that a few crumbs would be a giveaway. I felt he was taking a huge risk in having me over in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. What if his wife came home while I was there with his cock in my mouth? This seemed a bigger risk than a dirty kitchen counter. Once, during our sexy time, he got blood on the quilt. He had some sores on his skin that were bleeding. He was upset by the mess. He immediately wrapped the quilt up and made a call to have someone pick it up and have it specially washed. It's expensive being rich, he said, and laughed at his own joke. One Wednesday, he canceled on me last minute, and I called in my cancellation policy. He understood, but he got upset. I talked to my therapist about it. He wants to believe it's not about the money for you, she said. She was right. He admitted it later. He said exactly that. He wanted to feel that I wanted to be there with him. And I had exposed the fantasy. I was learning. Sex work is about sharing your body for compensation, but it's also about creating a fantasy that you are not doing that you are sharing because you want to. You enjoy their company, you find them attractive, you are turned on. You truly like them. For me, some of that had to be true. I'm not great at pretending. I've also learned if you look deeply enough at most people, you will find something attractive in them. I eventually stopped seeing my special friend from the museum. I imagined maybe he came out to himself and found a nice man to visit with him and put his dildo aside. Perhaps this allowed him to start liking himself, which meant his wife and son could also stop hating him. And maybe he even began to treat the lunch shift servers with respect. Or none of that is true, but it's the fantasy I've created. Thank you. So we can come back up here. I don't know if people have questions or comments or anything, any audience members would like to share.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. And please do, there are so many different flavor of stories in the book. One thing I was really pleased with is the diversity, the variety. So yeah, you didn't hear surrogate partner in here right now or pro-dom, but we got those going in the book. Just different modalities. And I was so pleased. I think also a lot of times books, I think if you said anthology on sex work, some people might just assume women, either trans women or cisgender women. And I'm so happy that we have as many men in this book as we do. And I think those voices are, you know, some of the most powerful. So I feel like this is a beautiful place to be to honor that. Yeah, any thoughts, questions for any one of our readers?
How much does a sex worker make on average?
Gosh, that's a good question. I don't think there's an average, because I think just as you heard in some of the stories, there could be people, you know, who are working on the street who are maybe making very little, to people who could be making a whole lot. So I would say it'd be really hard to come up with an average. There's just, yeah, so many different factors there, and a lot of that does have to do with privilege, you know, who has the privilege to be able to, you know, not work on the street and be able to charge large amounts of money. So there's, yeah, but that's a good question. Other thoughts or questions? We do appreciate you all being here. We'll take some time now. We have snacks in the back. We have books for sale. We're happy to sign books for you all. And again, just thank you everyone for being here.
Good night, online viewers.